welcome to part 15 of our cheap 440 build. On this episode we are going to show installation and orientation of piston rings. Most sets of piston rings will come with a set of instructions inside of them. Easy peasy, follow the instructions, pay attention to details, and you're good to go. But for those of us that have a set of piston rings that have been hanging around for a while, lost the instructions, or you're new at this and you just want some guidelines to go by, well, here we go. So for starters, your piston rings come in file fit, and they come in pre-gapped as well as gapless for race applications and such. Now for file fit rings, you have to insert the piston ring into the bore and measure your gap. It's a good idea to do that with your pre-gapped rings as well, just to know that you're within your specs. And I've already done that. I'm happy with the spec for each of the compression rings. So to go further than that, we've got our top compression ring and our second compression ring, and then we have our oil control ring expander assembly. Now the top ring, you can see it's got a shiny mark on it. These are plasma rings, or moly rings, sorry. And if we look, we are trying to find an orientation mark. Sometimes there are, sometimes there are not. And when there isn't an orientation mark, the only thing you'll need to do is check, hope this focus, check right in here and out here, look for a bevel. If there is a bevel, the bevel points down normally. But hopefully you've got your instructions and you're good to go. So without a mark on your ring anywhere, you can install this one in any orientation. There is no bevel. Okay. The second ring, if you'll notice, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a bevel on the second ring right here. So when you've got the bevel, you look for a dot or a mark or a paint dab, and here we have a dot. And that dot states up. Any markings on the piston rings are always up. They don't normally deviate. If they do, it will be in the instructions. But normally, up is the way to go for any markings. Your oil expander rings. You've got a bottom ring, a top ring, and a middle ring. They are to control the oil on the cylinder walls, and it's essentially a light-duty scraper just to make sure your compression rings don't get overloaded with engine oil slinging from the crankshaft and all around everything. Oil control rings. Alright, so I'm going to put you in the stand and I'm going to show you how I install piston rings, and from there we'll run the how I like to set them up, where I like to orientate the piston rings, because it is important for startup. But here goes. Alright, so on our piston we have 3 grooves, 1, 2, 3, and we always start with the bottom. We take our oil expander rings, you put the big corrugated guy on first, and normally there is no orientation up or down on him. I should note there is a little ledge on the back end of all of these expanded corrugations, I guess you would say. And that is so the piston ring, the oil expander ring, will rest on that when properly installed. It's kind of a support system. They all work together as one piece. So I just like to drop it on. These guys are light duty. I mean, don't go bending them and twisting them, but they're light duty. And I just take them and I roll them down around and get them into place. Boom. Same thing all the way down and around, in place. So now we've got our gaps here. What you end up doing is I just like to put them 90 degrees from the oil expander rings gap and 180 degrees opposing each other. So that way you can throw this guy on anywhere and it's going to get sealing all the way around. Hope that makes sense. Next up, second ring. I always put the second compression ring on first. And if you are mismatching, you can always double check, like, oh yeah, that's going to fit without too much wobble or anything, but we don't want to get into that. So there's our mark. Take the ring. I like to start it at the edge of the groove and then just keep pushing it and expand it around. Done. Same thing. So our top ring, there is no beveling, there is no mark on it. It can go any direction. Double check. Yep, we're happy. Hold it on the edge of the groove with your thumbs and just start pushing apart and slide it in. Done. You don't need the pliers, the expander pliers. I don't like using them. I've seen guys actually break piston rings doing it because they'll try to expand it the whole way so they can just down over top. These guys will only expand so far, and once you go past where they'll go, they just shatter. They'll crack, break, and then you're stuck with a set of piston rings that is not complete anymore. So now we know our orientation on our oil ring is good. We're set there. We don't like putting our piston ring gaps anywhere near the pin. So then I will take my second ring. I'll usually put it over on this half of the skirt. And then we take the gap of our top ring and I put it on the opposite side. You can have them sitting somewhere around 90 degrees apart or better, and as long as you're away from the piston pin, I find in my thought process anyway, then you're happy. Now everybody say if you're worried that your ring gap is changing, well, your rings rotate on the pistons. They have to. If they just stay in one spot, they'll stick and stuck, and then they're not going to do their job. So don't let anybody ever tell you that your piston rings stay in the same orientation. They will constantly rotate around as the engine's running and you're varying your RPM. So this is for initial installation to get the best possible seal from your piston ring to your cylinder wall. There's my number 1 gap. No other gap. There's my number 2 gap. There's my lower oil control ring gap. There's my upper oil control ring gap. And my oil control ring split is right here. Nothing is anywhere near each other. And that's it. We're happy. We can install that piston. Alright, thanks guys. Really appreciate you watching that video. Hope you got something out of it. Please like, subscribe, and share. And everybody have a good day.